I do want to shift gears a bit because I'd like to get your reaction to these ongoing trade talks with China. I know you sit on the Appropriations Committee. So how does all this tension with China factor into the budget conversations here at home?
Well, in our budget process and our appropriations process, we put a lot of measures in that talked about not funding programs that benefit the Chinese Communist Party, discontinuing joint efforts, research. And we want to make sure we have a strong military to deter any aggression in the South Pacific and make sure we work with our allies to prevent World War III, which, China is clearly becoming more aggressive in the region. They're building up their military and threatening Taiwan and other neighbors in the region.
Yeah, sticking with China, Congressman, you serve as the chairman of the House Select Committee on China, and I do want to get to the proposed TikTok deal, supposedly framework now in place. President Trump supposed to talk to President Xi later this week. Now, the Treasury Secretary says we are not willing to sacrifice national security for a social media app. What do you think about what you're hearing so far about this deal to possibly save TikTok?
Well, I think it's encouraging that the Treasury Secretary, the Trade Representative, the President are all engaged, the Vice President, on making sure that we don't allow TikTok to continue to be a national security threat and a propaganda machine for the Chinese Communist Party. And so what they're talking about is implementing a law that requires a divestiture so that American ownership or a like-minded country rather than a foreign adversary would be able to influence America in this way. And I think it's really productive that they're having these negotiations. And my hope is they can get to a resolution that protects national security and make sure that Americans control the algorithm that is so accessible, especially to young people, many of whom get their news from TikTok.
And I want to stay with China just for a bit, because last week I know you released a report exposing how U.S. universities are tied to Chinese military-linked institutions through partnerships, joint institutes. How concerned should Americans be that our universities are becoming pipelines for the CCP?
Well, this is something that's been going on for years, and there was an assumption that China was this benign developing nation and we were partnering on all these areas of research. But what we've realized is China uses this for dual use. They use it for domestic purposes, also for military purposes. And unfortunately, many of these collaborations have turned into U.S. taxpayer dollars, U.S. researchers partnering to help build the Chinese military-industrial complex. Our committee has been driving a wedge between that. Many universities have discontinued these programs, and we're cutting off the funding that would benefit the Chinese military. And so we're making progress, but Americans should be concerned. And we want to make sure that our investor dollars don't go in and fund these same operations. We've seen Wall Street investing in Chinese military or surveillance companies, and that needs to stop.